Hi, this is Privateer Station, and this morning we're bringing you day 465 of Russian invasion into Ukraine. As always, with former advisor to the Office of the President of Ukraine, Lieutenant Colonel Olexiy Arestovych, and Russian opposition politician, lawyer, and blogger Mark Feygin. Thank you guys for your continuous support. Thank you, Bill, for your super thanks. And with that, we dive into day 465. Enjoy. Dear friends, glad to see you all on Feygin Live. It is Saturday, June 3rd, by the way, 3 minutes past 10 in Kiev, same time in Moscow, and we are doing our regular stream with Olexiy Arestovych. Olexiy, glad to see you. Mark, can I please congratulate you with your birthday today and wish you all the best, all the most amazing, so that you grow to be big and successful general persecutor of Russia, and you put a big fat dot in that story with all the people supporting Putin and Kremlin at the moment. And I think our viewers will join me in congratulating you, and you can do that by clicking like, and that'll be your present to Mark. And even my Skype is giving me a hint that Mark has birthday. So I'm posting the balloons there in the chat, and those who do not click like will see the curse of Black Abdullah and don't even ask me what it is. Alright, so it is day 465, we have a ton of news, fiery news. I would think Saturday, that's a little too much for Saturday, but you know, I keep joking that it's related to me and my birthdays. Remember when I visited Chasov Yar in Ukraine? That's when the counteroffensive near Bakhmut, on the flanks of Bakhmut, started. The front changed in that area. So I keep blaming myself on things happening, jokingly, but still. We have 38,000 clicking the like button. We have about 100,000 people starting to watch us. And of course, we wait that you for sure will continue subscribing, clicking the like button if you have not done that yet, and of course do that to the Privateer Station if you're listening or watching that in English. Let's start with the hot news, and it's not just one, it's not two, there are many of them. First of all, Shebekina in Russia. People are stating that it's rather hellish there. A representative from Russian Volunteer Corps, Fortuna, that's his call sign, is telling the story. Also, Russian sources are confirming that. The fact is that there are volunteers from that corps around Shebekina, not in the town, and Russian military are shelling Shebekina itself with artillery, and there are other things flying into it. So the city is being leveled in front of them. And all of these damage, all of these destruction is being done by Russian military. I once quoted Gaydar Jamal, a friend of mine, when he was talking to a dissident who just was released from prisons, from Soviet prisons. So he was using Sverdlovsk as Voronezh as an example city of Russia, just average city of Russia. What do you think if, in order to save leadership of Russia and their power, they would need to drop a nuke on one of their towns? Do you think they'll do it? Of course they would. The answer was absolutely they will. So, do you think that what they're doing there now in Shebekina, can it change the picture in any way? It seems like they don't have any other way to fight. It's just at first they were leveling Ukrainian cities, and now they're leveling their own wherever there is threat. It just seems to me that if Russian Volunteer Corps will enter Belgorod tomorrow, Belgorod will be the next one on the list to be leveled. Your word, Olexiy. Yeah, and it is a problem for Volunteer Corps and for Legion of Russia because they entered Russia to actually liberate parts of Russia from Putin's authority. Unfortunately, Russia keeps destroying everything in the vicinity. And there were some videos, there were some pictures of machines and vehicles and trucks being destroyed. And our people got news that from Volunteer Corps and from Legion of Russia that they were not the ones who destroyed these vehicles, that Russia destroyed those. And it rings a bell. There are a ton of stories when Putin's soldiers destroyed and shot at the vehicles after letting them through the blockpost. So that doesn't really look different from this. And the Kremlin authority that you have in Russia is very weird. If you can remember an uprising in Novocherkassk that was utterly destroyed. There were other things in Tambov that also had victims and people killed as a result of each uprising. And just Gulag itself is a very unique invention of that country. So imagine that Russian Volunteer Corps grows to 25,000 instead of a couple hundred. They can liberate a big swath of Russia from Putin's regime with that way of regime fighting against their own people, because people start to have really rude awakening right there in Shebekina. And in any way, this event itself and what Putin's regime is doing there in Shebekina weakens what they can, what they are capable of doing in Ukraine. So even with just a couple hundred fighters that entered Russia, Putin regime doesn't have enough resources to block them everywhere. So I call upon Russian military to continue switching sides, to come and join Legion of Russia, Freedom of Russia, and Russian Volunteer Corps, to switch sides, to come join and fight against Putin. Of course, we understand our relations with Putin's Russia, but that's weird that they still continue shooting their own people. And what another interesting part of that news is that the speed with which citizens of Shebekina lost their human look. A lot of marauders, a lot of thievery. The moment police is out of town, there is a ton of people marauding in stores and stealing personal property. Here's a video. I have no words. These marauders just turned everything upside down, stole everything they could. They stole all the money we had. It's unfucking believable. How can one steal from your own people in such time? So, yeah, here is the video. Olexiy, you can comment on that. The problem, Mark, and it's not even that Kremlin power behaves in Russia as they have occupied these territories. The problem is that a big part of Russian population also behaves themselves as if they are on the occupied territories. It's sort of an medieval Mongolian archetype when you steal and pillage and then dump the bones behind your yurt and then pack things and go. And nobody wants to develop that area. Because people who are marauding like that, they need to understand that this is an internationally recognized country, right? No questions about that being part of Russia. And ideally, right, you'd be part of people trying to either resist regime or fight with that regime, or join along in other wars that it does. But they're doing something different. And I was thinking about the perspective of Russian uprising and what could that lead to if that happens. That would be mass thievery, just a thievery inc, neighbors from neighbors. And between them, there'll be specially armed groups like Wagner looking for tastier and more interesting pieces of the pie, such as industrial establishments, companies, and all. So this is a very hellish picture. And the weird part about that whole thing is that Putin fans, they are actually proud of that. They are proud of their sledgehammer murders. They're proud of killing any opposition. And they're also proud of maximum cruelty to their opposition, to people who think differently, to people who try to fight that oppressive regime. We think that the nation survives as long as they have a variety of thought, as they are really helping each other and just figuring out how to evolve, how to go further together. But it's a different picture that's in Russia. And back in early 90s, I was talking to a person who was an intel officer who went through all the Cold War, who was a professional intelligence officer. And I did ask him, do you think that KGB is strong? And he said that maybe in some cases, but for the most part we always knew that we'll win. And you know why? Because special service that kills its own people and the way they treat them, with threats, with blackmail, with holding their family members hostage, we always knew that they're not free, that they may have occasional success here and there, and even in some time span they may succeed for a while. But ultimately they'll lose, because they're not free people fighting for their freedom. And they know it. And when we're talking today about Legion of Freedom of Russia and Russian Volunteer Corps, first of all, right, we understand there are not thousands, there are not tens of thousands of them, but they're drawing down Putin's resources on themselves. That's important. And people who are fighting for freedom, they will always win the slaves that are fighting for their master. So here's our polling, Olexiy, following your intro. To save itself, will Kremlin drop a nuke on their own city to save their power? Yes, are saying 49%, no, saying 30%, and I don't give a fuck, 21%. So let's continue. Guys, please continue voting. You already have 150,000 watching us live, 70,000 click the like button. I remind that on Alexei's channel there is also live stream. They figured out the technical capacity to do that. So you can do it either or. And of course you can watch it in English and listen to English in the privateer station. And yes, guys, do not forget to congratulate Mark with his birthday. The easiest way to do it is click the like button or subscribe if you have not done that yet. Okay, let's continue. The next thing that's on our radar is the following information. I'm reading the quote from Reuters. Taman stops loading ships because after all these UAV attacks, natural gas is a very dangerous commodity to be shipped. And after UAV's attacks to Afipsky and Novolinsky gas processing facilities in Krasnodar region, they decided to freeze the liquefied natural gas cargo going through Taman port, and that's about 10% of liquefied natural gas of Russian market. And UAVs hit some of the storages, destroyed some of the... Yeah, after their successful attack, they destroyed a couple of storage facilities in the area, and that led to disruption of liquefied natural gas. In Shebekino, the plant Crystal was also burned down. This was a third in the world factory for producing artificial crystals for electronics, and it doesn't exist anymore. So, looking at all the damage, Moscow is finally facing that they actually are getting the blowback. The war is coming to their country. That they're smiling about Rublevka, about UAVs attacking their houses in Moscow suburbs and Putin's residence, but there are other consequences, very significant ones. What do you want to say about it? So monocrystal, that's a definite loss. That's a very unique factory that they lost there. And the second, I want to say that UAVs of Urals People's Republic are successful and surprisingly successful, because to mark these two milestones and take 8% away from Russian liquefied gas imports, that's a significant number. This is a number that UK and United States could be proud of during the days of their fight with the Third Reich, except for they were fighting losing hundreds of planes and thousands of people on the front to achieve that. And here, just several UAVs achieved such a tremendous success. So when there are good people managing it, the war really changed. The war changed. And My kudos go to the partisans of Rostov, Krasnodar, and Ural People Republics. And we congratulate them with that fantastic military result. And the war starts to show economic teeth to Russian Federation, not just in the sense of sanctions, but also as a result from actual military actions. Long live the partisans. They're surprisingly effective. 8% from the overall liquefied gas, that's unbelievable. That's a huge blow. All right, we have 165,000 with us. Mark, I want to remind that you can also generally sum it up and say, well, it's 10% less fuel for Russian troops in the war in Ukraine. So minus 10% effectivity, that's a significant milestone, significant success. All right, the theme continues. We are watching a video by Zatulin, an old KGB dude. Oh, I know this one in person. Yeah, I was a congressman with him also back when I was a congressman in Russia in early 2000s. So he's an old KGB dude. He's got his own institute and his own facility there. So that's what he's stating. A rather unusual statement, and we'll bring it to the screen. So, what goals did we have at the beginning of this operation? Just remember, denazification, demilitarization, Ukraine neutrality, and defense of citizens of Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics who were suffering all the time. Konstantin, no, wait, I need to finish. On which of these items did we achieve any success today? None of them. Moreover, some of them lost any sense completely. Like Ukraine neutrality. We cannot even pose it these days anymore. They'll never be neutral. If Ukraine remains after this war, they'll never be neutral to us. And now the question, since we did talk about Ukraine as a country, as a government, will the Ukraine stay after this war as the result of this war? That's what we discussed. And I want to answer you, yes, they will. Yes, Ukraine will stay, because with the current support that Ukraine is getting, we do not have enough forces to overcome that. We do not have force to change that, so Ukraine will stay. There are different opinions. This is just your opinion. Of course, yeah, I'm not talking about anybody else's opinion. I'm only expressing my opinion. Don't even need to highlight that. But Ukraine will stay. And in my opinion, the leadership of our country is staying mum about that. And rightly so. But in effect, by doing that, they're giving everybody a hint that they understand that that's what's going to happen. All right, so that he's still the congressman. He still takes official position in Russia. So there was a interesting, I call it, special session of big experts on Ukraine, and they were gathering earlier since the beginning of war and discussing how they'll capture it in 3 days. So he comes out here and says that none of the goals was achieved, and the question about complete capture of Ukraine is not even on the agenda, because Ukraine, with Zelensky or with anybody else, will stay. And he is referring to allied support to the West, but the country fought for its sovereignty and the government and the right of the country to exist with its own government. So Russia doesn't have it to capture it. And this is a signal. He actually dedicated enough time to Yanukovych, to Maidan, to some other Ukrainian research before. So he is not a random person. Oh no, he is not. He is one of the people who aided Putin to form the politics in regards to Ukraine. And he is also very by the book, very protocol. And even though he is to some opposition to those idiots who, in his opinion, spoiled Ukrainian politics in Russia, he is still his body of that Putin's government. He is not an opposition. So a statement like that, that's not even the childish disease of leftism in communism, as Lenin wrote back in the early 20th century. This one is almost a revolt. This is like the first official case of recognizing the reality during the last 16 months by a functionary of his level. And this is only half an issue. This also resonates with a very interesting statement made by Peskov today. that Putin is ready to conduct negotiations with Ukraine. And statements made by Orban, where they even supported with a video that one should not support Ukrainian counteroffensive. Where in that video, by the way, curiously, they painted Crimea to be Russian, which goes against the official statement of Hungary about that territory. So, and he was telling that there'll be a lot of blood, a lot of people, so let's freeze the whole conflict. So that points for me that Russian authorities are really afraid of Ukrainian counteroffensive. They understand that they will be losing, they'll be losing a lot of resources and people, and they're using any resource to start talking about that. So Zatulin is one of those people who is trying to prepare their population to that eventuality in advance. They're basically coming out now to say later that, see, I warned you that these things are going to happen. And it's a rather significant note that a lot of them are starting to talk about, and Putin is using that to try to freeze things on the front. Do you think this is the result of the counteroffensive and the whole psychological pressure? Do you think they know any dates, any significance? I don't know if they know any actual facts about the counteroffensive, but I think they're evaluating the statement of our president that we are ready, and also some other events unfolding around the front. And there is some information that during the last 10 days, Russian command at least 7 times prepared their troops for the imminent danger of counteroffensive. And it's almost like crying wolf. Imagine that. Over the week, you have to do it 7 times. This is the flow of events that eventually will lead you to ignoring some of the signs when they actually unfold. So this is wasting resources. This is wasting military resource. And that is not the most important. The most important is revealing for your opponents, meaning us in Ukraine, how will you react in case of a counteroffensive. And 7 times, that gave us a lot of information about interesting methods and actions and plans that they have. So they basically were revealing how will they react when we start active engagement, active counteroffensive campaign. So all that hysteria shows that the degree of stress is really high there, and it starts to blow through people like Zatulin. If they even launched Orban, if they launched even some people from Indonesia about their peace initiative with Ukraine, everybody and their pope to try to talk to Ukraine to not wage the counteroffensive. So everywhere they could reach, everywhere they have still some leverage, they asked them to come out. And this once again shows me that they're rather realistically gauge the perspectives of counteroffensive. But I was saying before, and I'm still saying, that you guys will love it. You'll love it in a way that even your grandsons will remember the story of you should not be going to Russia with war, to Rus with war. All right, we have about 97,000. Click the like button. Come on, 3,000. Click that like button. Smash it as a congratulation for Mark. And we have 195,000 watching us live. I continue asking our viewers to continue sharing links to that stream. I understand it's Saturday, but still, do it. Just give that chance to others who haven't seen it yet. Especially if you can send it to Belgorod, to Russian trenches, make sure they see that, because we do talk about their imminent future. Who else will? And subscribe to Feygin Live, to Olexiy Arestovych, and to the Privateer Station if you are listening or watching that in English. Our poll continues. 47,000 voted. I remind that our question today is, to save itself, will Kremlin drop a nuke on its own city? Yes. About 49%. 30% saying no, 21% saying don't give a fuck. So, you also saw the communication between Dilimkhanov, the closest person to Kadyrov, a congressman, and later it was picked by the Davudov, the leader of Chechen parliament. They basically attacked in the public sphere Prigozhin and suggested that to take him out and discuss it in person. And oh miracle, because Prigozhin did not answer himself since Kadyrov didn't answer, but his spokesperson, Utkin, who is a real military commander of Wagner, comes out and with a similar attack on the Chechens, and in the most despicable way. And I quoted that in my other stream with Piantkovsky. The way it was said was basically, no questions, sure, let's go see you. And we met you in the first Chechen war and the second Chechen war. And I'm the hero of Russia, and Wagner is the strongest troop that Russia has. So bring your problems over here, we'll give you some answers. Now Prigozhin comes out and says that, okay, question is closed, let's settle it down. But personally, as someone with experience in Russian political sphere, that authority of North Caucasus groups, criminal groups supported by Kadyrov, they held a lot of horizontal business branches, industries. They had a good access to powers in different regions, and their authority is now questioned. Now there is a different power. There is Wagner, which now actually is comprised of those, you can imagine, who returns from war. Not many, but who does. They're criminals, they're murderers, plus their own professional contractors who survived the conflict in Ukraine and came back. So they become a sort of authority in parts of Russia. And they become the second power that Russians will turn to. If they get offended by Kadyrov's, they'll likely go to Wagner. And with their complaints, and very likely will get the question resolved. So they'll be bringing their money to that group. At least in central Russia, Petersburg, Moscow, the power is changing. This is criminal branch of power, of course. This is not a federal argument, this is a criminal argument. But it does look like Kadyrov was told to throw that at Wagner, and Wagner didn't fret, and actually stood its own and kicked back. So in public, they came back and sort of tried to put it down, but in essence, they still have the conflict. One side brought the problem up, the second said, well, bring it on, let's duke it out, and nothing else happened yet. So I agree with you on this, that first of all, Mark, that yes, Prigozhin is probably, according to some polling, is probably a second popular person in Russia, because he speaks to a certain archetypical figure that Russians seem to like, is the person who says the truth about the situation and doesn't sweat about calling things as they are, even when it relates to the group in power. And the problem that I see is that the story of suppression by Kadyrovs and Chechens in general of Russians, it is an old trauma. We remember starting from the from first Chechen war, even before that, one of the main topics about that is those guys from Caucasus, they attacked Russians, they made Russian military to apologize for whatever they did. They attacked something else and exerted their power and basically gathering money and ruling a certain shadow industries. And suddenly there is another branch of power that is available to be used, and it is strong enough to push back against Chechens, against Kadyrovs, I should say. And some people are saying, and evil tongues, I would say, right, are saying that Wagner is supported by Patrushev, by FSB, because the relation of FSB with Kadyrov is well known that they are not friends. And also these experts are saying that Wagner would not be attacking Kadyrovs without support from FSB, because they were never strong in terms of criminal world. They were more mercenaries than that. And the conflict is still brooding between FSB and Kadyrov, because FSB was recently doing another event in Mozdok, in not far away from Chechnya, in Ossetia, and Kadyrov and his people ignored it because Patrushev keeps saying that, well, we still have some lawlessness in Russia where the laws of Sharia are being used. Chechen leader doesn't like that. Also, there were other incidents like the murder of Nemtsov, which directly led to Kadyrov and his people. So FSB is definitely in a long game against Kadyrov, and it's very likely that it is a branch of FSB, together with Wagner, are playing out that role that now there is another power that can liberate Russia from Kadyrov people who are dominating throughout Russia in different areas, except for FSB itself and some paramilitary orgs. But what average Russian sees, that suddenly they see, instead of those pumped up tough Kadyrov gangs who lost their authority during the Ukrainian war because they didn't really participate much. They were at the beginning, and Ukrainians were not impressed because, right, yeah, we closed that matter quickly. We don't care if you're from Chechnya or Urals or somewhere else, right? They just shoot them. And the second, a key moment for Russians is that against them, Wagner puts pretty tough guys as well. In their videos, they usually put the ones who are taller and stronger, who actually are known for their cruelty and for their bloodthirstiness on the front. They took Popasna, Soledar, and Bakhmut. And I'm not saying that Bakhmut is really taken, I'm saying what Wagner is stating politically. So here we have only two options left. Either Wagner's win over Kadyrov on the criminal front, and then Chechens lose the grasp. They lose a big ton of their power and influence in Russia, and one can earn a lot of electoral capital on that. Not even talking about the actual capital, just electoral capital, which probably we're talking about here. Or they lose, and then Wagner remains as a futile little private mercenary corps somewhere in Central African Republic, but doesn't exist in Russia. So it's interesting that Utkin, one of the commanding officers in Wagner, who was very quiet since Debaltseve for years, suddenly comes out and shows his face and says, yeah, we do take that attack on Prigozhin as a personal attack. It is a personal and direct threat to us, and if you are willing to address that, come here. And yeah, it's such a blogger conversation between them. You come, no, you first. So we'll see how it unfolds. And it'll be curious to see if even Putin will crawl out of the bunker and say a couple of words about this conflict. But situation is curious. And it's very curious in this electoral branch, in its electoral aspect, that I think Wagner is definitely playing towards, and also intercepting the agenda, becoming the voice of the real Russia that is attacking all these archetypical points, and Russian Bogatyr, well, sorry, it's got the last name German that they used, Wagner, but still, they're using that as the as the ray of light that has a potential to win and push back against the dark influence of Chechens. And that's a strong story, or they lose, and then it's a very sad story. But we'll see. Wagner has more authority in the military sense of things, because Kadyrov authority really faded during this war in Ukraine, and Kadyrov gangs have more experience in fighting. They have more experience over years. But if FSB would support Wagner and advise them, different interesting outcomes can happen. And this is the case when we sincerely wish success for both sides, and let's watch how it unfolds. All right, we've been 34 minutes live. Our polling continues. We have 60,500 people voted. I remind the question, will Kremlin to save its power drop a nuke on a Russian city? 41% say yes, That changed. No, 27%. They're waiting something more humane from Kremlin. And don't give a fuck, 31%. Let's move further. There is a different information floating around, published by one of the Ukrainian agencies. Borrell, the head of foreign political establishment of European Union, talked with South Korea about artillery ammo for Ukraine. Josep Borrell had a meeting with the Minister of Defense of South Korea, Lee Chun-sup, and he posted about that on his own Twitter. They met on the Security Summit in Singapore, and Borrell stated that he discussed with Lee Chun-sup the needs of Ukraine in artillery ammo, artillery shells. They discussed the unfolding situation, and he states that they're working together on developing new defense capability. And he posted here's a photo of his tweet. And earlier it was mentioned that 220,000 artillery shells would be supplied to Ukraine. So it's an interesting geography, right? We heard about South Korea before, but now Borrell is talking to that, not NATO, not somebody else, not even, Ramstein Forum, but that club of ministers of defense. It's Borrell himself who's going there and talking to South Korea about the artillery shells for Ukraine. What can you say about that? Well, first of all, in Europe, they take that problem seriously. The problem of technical support of Ukraine. This is very serious for them. And it is not even the position of UK and United States. It's the position of the combined Europe that they need to supply Ukraine with enough artillery ammo. And they understand that the tempo of their production is slow. They are behind from the necessities of this war. They're not catching up. So where are they looking for it? One of the most serious artillery hubs is South Korea. Because in North Korea, they have a special favor for artillery systems. Some people are saying that they have up to 150,000 different units. So South Korea is also very good in terms of artillery. And the military industry is very successful. Some European countries bought their tank, which is also very successful creation. And South Korea was refraining from participating in these negotiations. They did not want to heat their relations with China, just in case, but seems like politically the situation got somehow resolved, something changed. So they are talking now, and their potential of producing artillery ammo is huge. It's way bigger than what we can expect in Europe, because they're in ongoing conflict with North Korea, and they never thought that they needed to freeze that production. So they keep doing it. Just the motorized howitzer, that howitzer system that they have 1,200 in storage. To say the least, that's a lot. I'm not opening any mysteries, any secret information here, but that's a lot. And the visit of Borrell to South Korea, that's a very strong sign. If South Korea decides to support Ukraine, this will be another very strong, like kids' math problem about two pipes coming in and pouring out the water going into the swimming pool. So the one that pours out is the one that is representing the ones we're using on the front by thousands on the front. And the one that comes in is problematic because the whole European Union, the whole NATO was producing about 300,000 of artillery shells a year. And Russian command was shelling us with 300,000 in a week. And Korean support, Korean pipe with artillery ammo can be rather equal to what Europe can provide. So imagine that 220,000 that NATO produces, they don't give everything to us; they give part. And then if South Korea can chime in, this will be a very significant factor to influence our supply. And Korea is probably one last hub in the world where you can find more military equipment, even from the storage, because they have a lot of it reserved and stored. And we can definitely use it on the front. We don't know if that pipeline will open and how much, but even if it is just artillery shells, that will be a significant help to our defense and to our task of killing that hydra on our territory. Because we're seriously concentrated on this counteroffensive, right? But there'll be a second one and a third one. And the second will probably have F-16s already, and probably a few interesting things from South Korea. And by that time, the Western production is also picking up in artillery ammo. We already see that just the presence of Storm Shadow in some notable quantities already changing the front. Berdyansk, Mariupol, Melitopol, right? We definitely got confirmations that those are Storm Shadow. And it's very close to 100% exact hits. These are modern missiles, very difficult to be shot down. So we see that the effectivity is growing. If Germans will give us ours, the length announced is higher than Storm Shadow, is further than Storm Shadow. So we get new capability to reach deeper. And here's an interesting thing, that the forces of Ukraine, or basically a post-Soviet army, they always had more accent on artillery. But the presence of missiles, the presence of these systems allows us to switch that towards aviation. And we can shoot deeper, because artillery cannot reach 300 miles deep into the occupied territories, into the Russian positions. Aviation can with these new means. And that basically says that we are switching more to the NATO model of warfare, where aviation is stronger than artillery. And if we get the F-16s in this regard, we will switch this picture even more. And then we'll see very interesting results, because that might be the weapon that defeats a brunt of Russian artillery systems. Then the effectivity of us taking out their artillery will be much more drastically effective. And they carry different missiles, air to ground, that allows to attack a lot of targets on the ground, given that a lot of their air defense systems are being withdrawn to defend what? Moscow, to defend their cities, their airports closer to the border. So they're not on the front. And that may allow us an interesting strategic window. And right now there is a group that they have in Liman. This is the last aggregated group of Putin's troops that has a potential to attack. Everywhere else they're pretty worn out. But this is the only group that could still possibly attack. And now they have to tear that apart, because when things are heating up in Shebekina, things are heating up across the border, they actually have to start tearing that group apart in order to respond. So we are anxiously awaiting F-16s and probably more interesting systems coming from the West, because it takes a while for the Western production to ramp it up. They are still not in the planned level of supplies, but they're getting there. Probably will be autumn when they get to 100% of plant capacity. And if South Korea will join the fight, that'll be an interesting bingo. All right. So, concluding our polling, 70,000 voted. To save itself, will Kremlin drop a nuke on a Russian city? Yes, they will. 40%. No, they won't. 28%. And don't give a fuck. 31%. And we conclude that poll. So the bomb on Shebekina, the nuke on Shebekina won in that poll, so Russian citizens might await. We have 200 plus thousands viewing us. Please continue clicking like, subscribing. Thank you for joining us. continue sharing it in your social media to bring more eyeballs on the next week. There probably will be some very explosive streams, given that me and Olexiy will participate in several events together. And of course, subscribe to Feygin Live and to Olexiy Arestovych. And if you are listening or watching that in English, also subscribe to the Privateer station. And happy birthday, Mark. Right, yes, happy birthday to me. We are planning for Monday for 10 p.m., right? There might be a shift there, but the next stream maybe to 11 p.m. We'll see. There may be some technical difficulties there, but we're planning Monday for now. Hopefully nothing changes. And we'll see you then. Thank you so much for congratulations. See you soon.